Billabong lay flat as hammered tin when the first ripple ran against the wind. My spear shaft sweated in my hands, though the night air felt suddenly cold. Black water shivered, then sagged inward, as if the earth drew breath beneath it. Frogs fell silent mid-croak. A sour, muddy stench rose. Something vast rolled just below the surface, and one yellow eye opened where no eye should be. Men have asked me to recount this, to set it down before my tongue stills. If you find worth in an old hunter's memory, give it your favor, speak of it to others, and let your thoughts be known below. Stories live when they are answered. It began 3 weeks earlier, in the cool season of 1700, when our clan travelled toward the deep water beside the Red Gums west of the Murrumbidgee. I was a younger man then, quick in the legs and foolish in the mind, proud of my hunting arm. My name matters little now, but I hunted beside Jara, my older cousin, and Bilan, who laughed louder than any man I knew. We followed the old songline, spears over our shoulders, the women and children behind us with the nets and bark vessels. The elders spoke of good fishing at the Billabong that year. The river had pulled away from its old path and left that broad, still pool, fringed with reeds and paperbark, full of fat fish and waterfowl. It was a place my mother had warned me about when I was small. "Do not swim there when the dusk birds call," she had said. "Something listens." I had thought it only a mother's caution. On the first evening, the air smelled of warm dust and eucalyptus. Smoke from our fires drifted low. Jara sat beside me, cutting new barbs into his spear. He offered me a coal to light my pipe of dried leaf, a thing we had traded from the coastal people when they met the Pale Men long before my birth. We shared that pipe as the stars came. Bilan spoke of his young son, who had just taken his first wallaby. I spoke of my sister's baby, born under the last full moon. There was laughter. We spoke of wives, of mistakes, of hunts where we had missed easy throws. We were men who believed the land and our spears would always be enough. The first sign came as sound. In the deep night, when only the insects sang, I woke to a low, rhythmic knocking that seemed to travel through the earth. I thought at first it was someone walking past the camp, striking a spear butt on a log, yet no shadow passed the fire. The sound came from the direction of the Billabong, heavy and slow, like a giant heart beating below ground. By morning, I had half forgotten it. Men hear many things in the night. We set our nets in the shallow inlets and walked the edge of the water, spears ready. The surface lay smooth, reflecting the pale sky, but the frogs called from the reeds in crooked rhythm, leaving strange gaps, as if some counted them. We found prints in the soft mud, near a place where children had collected lilies years before. They looked like the tracks of a large seal, or perhaps a wombat, yet far too broad, twice the width of my palm. The toes spread wide, and there were too many of them. Jara crouched beside them, frowning. "Old marks," he said. "The water swelled here before." He tapped the dried edges with his spear tip. I agreed at once. To say otherwise would be to accept that such a thing had walked here in the night, and I wished to keep my courage. Only later did I remember that no cracked mud lay between those prints and the present waterline. They began at the reeds and ended at the reeds, with no returning trail. On the third day, the wind turned cold, though the sun still burned strong. A thin mist clung to the far edge of the Billabong, not rising, not drifting, simply hanging there as if pinned to the water. Fish avoided our nets on that side. Birds flew a wide curve rather than pass above it. "Water spirit smoke," Bilan said lightly, though his eyes did not follow his joke. "Perhaps it envies our cooking fires." Jara spat into the dust. "Spirits take the weak and the foolish," he said. "We are hunters." His voice held more force than belief. That night the knocking returned, closer and faster, like a drum struck deep beneath the water. I rose with my spear and crept through the cool grass to the edge. The stars trembled on the surface. The reeds whispered without wind. Then all insects ceased. No frog, no night bird. The sudden silence felt like a hand pressed over my ears. My breath sounded too loud. I stood there, foolish and proud, telling myself that silence was nothing, only a trick of my own blood. A faint tremor ran through the ground under my bare feet, as if something large turned over in thick mud far below. The water did not move. In the morning, we found the first clear mark of its passing. One of our bark canoes, which had been pulled well onto the bank, lay half in the water with its side crushed inward as though something heavy had lain upon it. There were no tracks in the sand, no drag marks, no sign of mischief by children, and the wood smelled of sour slime that made my throat tighten. It sank under its own weight, one of the elders said. The bark dried too much, yet his hands shook when he touched the slime. He told the children to keep away from the deeper cove. We mended the canoe and moved along the shore, believing work and talk would steady us. Still, the women gathered water from the shallows with unusual haste, and the smallest children clung to their mothers' legs. On the 6th day, the animals began to speak of it. A mob of kangaroos bounded past our camp at midday, tongues lolling, eyes rolling, as if some fire chased them, though the grass ahead lay unburned. They splashed through the upstream shallows, ignoring our shouts. Even the old males leapt with desperate, uneven strength. That afternoon, I tracked a goanna along the bank, eager for its meat. The large lizard led me toward the still cove. I followed, spear ready. Suddenly, it halted, raised itself high upon its legs, and tasted the air with its tongue. Then it turned aside, abandoning its own trail, and clambered inland with what seemed very like haste. I stood alone, feeling the hairs rise on my arms. The micro-shock came that evening, though I did not call it so then. Cloud covered the moon. We sat around the fire, telling half-hearted stories. Jara had just begun to speak, when a sharp crack split the air from the direction of the Billabong, as if a great branch had snapped. The sound struck through us like a thrown stone. Bilan seized his spear. "Tree fall," he muttered. Yet no crash followed, no rustling of branches. Instead, we heard again that slow knocking, but now it came not from beneath the ground. It echoed between the trees as though the trunks themselves beat hollow. The fire dimmed. Truly, I saw it. Flames that had licked strong at the bark logs sank low without smoke, as if something drew the strength from the coals. Jara swore and flung on more wood. Sparks flew up, but the heat did not rise until the knocking ceased. I could not explain it then. I cannot now. After that night, stories whispered around the camp. The elders spoke the word Bunyip only once, in a murmur as if it might hear its own name across water. They said some Billabongs held old things that were not of our time, creatures that guarded the places where the river no longer wished to flow. Some could be appeased, others avoided. Few were fought. I told myself these were tales for children, yet my sleep grew thin. Dreams carried the sound of that slow beating. One dawn, Mist lay thick over the entire Billabong, not only the far cove. It hugged the surface in a level sheet, no higher than a man's chest, white and still. Above it, the tree trunks rose clear and sharp. You could throw a stone and hear it splash, but you could not see the ripple. We decided to fish quickly, close to shore, for the children needed meat. 3 of us, Jara, Bilan and I, stepped into the water with spears, the chills seeping into our bones. The mist lapped against our skin like cold cloth. Beneath, I could feel the mud soft and thick between my toes. As we waded deeper, the silence grew so complete that our own movements seemed foreign. The faint drip from reeds carried far, yet no birds called. I heard my own heart and tried to believe that was all. Then a smell rose. It came not from rot or dead fish, which were known to us, but from something older, a heavy musk and decay that stuck to the back of the tongue. It drifted from the deeper part of the pool, where the mist lay thickest. Bilan gagged softly. "Dead cow," he whispered, though there were no cattle here, not in those days. Perhaps a drowned kangaroo. His words were an offering to reason, and we all accepted them without argument, though none of us believed. We saw our first sign of the thing that morning. Jara pointed ahead, his arm rigid. Through a thin tear in the mist, I glimpsed a dark hump just above the water, perhaps the size of a seal, slick and black. No head, no tail, only a curved back. It moved without sound, sending no ring across the surface, as if it slid not in water, but in the memory of water. We froze. The hump sank. The mist closed. Jara swallowed. "Big turtle," he said. "We leave it. Come back later." We walked backward to shore, spears lowered, and only when our feet touched dry sand did we breathe fully again. From that day, the camp divided. Some elders insisted we must leave the Billabong and follow the river elsewhere, even if the fishing proved poor. Others said the Bunyip, if such it was, had lived there long before us and would not trouble those who showed respect. Hunting was good. The children already laughed in the shallows again. Why abandon such a place for whispers and fog? Jara believed we could manage whatever lived there. Bilan wished to go. I stood between them, torn by pride and unease. As the days passed, the signs grew bolder. At night, something moved among the reeds with weight enough to bow them, yet no shape emerged onto land. Once we found long scratches on the smooth trunk of a river gum, starting below the waterline and reaching higher than a man's head. The bark curled outward as if torn by wet, heavy claws. "Driftwood," an elder said. The flood pushed a log against it. He spoke quickly, not meeting our eyes. The children were kept close after that. Fires burned nearer the water as though light might hold whatever watched at the edge. Then came the night when the still water erupted. I woke to screams and the sound of thrashing. The moon hung pale and high, shining on a scene that even now my tongue fails to name. At the edge of the Billabong, where 2 young men had chosen to sleep near their fishing lines, water burst upward in a great dark column, flinging mud and weed. Something huge rolled within it, a black against the moonlight, the size of a great hut. One of the youths, Maru, stumbled backward, covered in slime. The other vanished in that first violent heave, as if the water itself had swallowed him. I saw an arm reach up once, then disappear. His cry cut off as though clamped. The thing that rose with him was not formed for my eyes. I remember only impressions, a low, hunched mass, fur or weed dripping from it in long black ropes, a head that seemed too broad, as if pushed flat by deep water, and eyes, two pale discs that caught the moon and gave nothing back. They did not glow like a fire. They reflected like the eyes of a fish pulled from darkness. It made no roar. The only sound was the rush of water and the wet slap of its limbs as it flung itself half onto the bank. Where it touched, the reeds snapped like dry twigs, though they were green and thick. The air filled with that sour, musky stench, so strong my stomach clenched. "Run!" Jara shouted, his voice sharp with a fear I had never heard from him. He seized my arm and dragged me back. Around us, people fled in every direction, some toward the trees, others along the shore, children wailing. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the thing reach again. Something long and dark, whether arm or neck I cannot say, swept sideways through the shallows. It moved with dreadful ease, as if water gave it strength rather than resistance. Maru, who had been crawling away, vanished under a sudden surge. His spear flew spinning into the air and landed near my feet. We did not try to fight. Our spears, our courage, our talk of hunters and spirits, all fell away in that moment. This instinct ruled us. We ran. Behind us, the water thundered and then, terribly, fell silent. No pursuit followed us into the trees. Only the frogs resumed their uneven calls, one by one, as though counting the missing. By dawn, we had gathered the survivors a safe distance from the Billabong. 2 young men gone, 1 canoe crushed beyond repair, half our nets torn in the panicked flight. Children sobbed for fathers who would not return. The elders spoke in low, flat voices, arguing no longer about whether such a thing existed, only about how far we must travel to escape its reach. We left that very day. No one suggested a burial or a return to seek the bodies. The water had claimed them. To go back was to offer more. The journey away waited every step. Men who once moved lightly with their spears now walked with shoulders bowed, as if expecting a hand from beneath each puddle. At every shallow creek we crossed, people hurried, glancing down as though the earth itself breathed below. One night, 2 days' walk from the Billabong, we heard again that slow, distant knocking. It came through the ground, faint as memory. Jara and I looked at one another in the dark. No one spoke of turning back. We only walked farther the next day. When at last we reached the wider river and the territory of another clan, our account met wary ears. They knew the word Bunyip and had their own tales, yet to speak of it so near, the water felt dangerous. An elder from that clan listened to us, then nodded once. "We do not go to that Billabong," he said. "Our fathers did not, and now we know why." He offered no help, no warriors to avenge the dead. Against what would they have thrown their spears? In the seasons that followed, word of our encounter spread along the river. Some called it embellishment, saying grief had sharpened our tongues. Others avoided the old path entirely. Our own official telling, when strangers asked, grew thin. We spoke of dangerous water, of treacherous mud, of youths pulled under by reeds. It was easier for them, and perhaps for us. Yet among ourselves, at night, by smaller fires, the story remained whole. We remembered the crushed canoe, the clawed tree, the way the mist lay like a living skin upon the water. We remembered the eyes that held no anger, no hunger that we could understand, only a cold, measuring regard, as if we were the intruders in a place older than our songs. Years passed. Children grew who knew the tale only by hearsay. Still, I found the Bunyip followed me in small ways. Once, many summers later, I walked alone along a new stretch of river at dusk. A patch of water lay unnaturally still while the current hurried past it on either side. Fish rose in every other place, but not there. Beside that still patch stood a dead tree with long, deep scratches down its trunk. My legs carried me away before my mind formed the thought. Another time I met Bilan again after long wandering. He had grey in his hair and lines around his eyes. We shared tobacco and spoke of families, of hunts, of foolish youth. At last, as the fire burned low, he cleared his throat. "Do you still hear it, cousin?" he asked. "Hear what?" I said, though I knew. "The knocking." He looked into the coals. "Sometimes when I sleep near water, even just a little pool after rain, I feel it under my back." I told him I felt it too, in memories, in the weight of silence before dawn. We said no more. Some things once named come closer. There were times when younger men urged me to guide them to that Billabong, boasting of their courage and new weapons. I refused, saying I had forgotten the way, though in truth I could have walked there blindfolded. What right had I to lead others to that edge, only to watch the water take them? In old age, I have sat with storytellers who record our words upon bark and paper, eager to fix them so they will not drift away. When they ask about the Bunyip, I give them the softened version, the one of treacherous mud and strange currents. They write it down, satisfied. What else can I do? No drawing or mark could capture that first slow heave of the Billabong, that eye-opening in the place where no creature should look upon the world. Privately, the fuller truth remains with a few of us who still wake at night when the frogs fall silent. I have dreamed of returning, of standing once more at that edge to see if the water remembers me. Each time I imagine it, the dream ends the same way. A tremor in the ground, a smell of old sour musk, and a spreading ripple that moves against the wind. I have come to accept that some corners of the land hold lives that do not share our stories, that answer only to their own deep laws. Perhaps the Bunyip is not monster nor spirit, but simply another inhabitant of this country, ancient and patient, watching from the places we seldom look for eyes. Yet when I close my own eyes, what returns is not its size or its violence, but one small thing. After our flight, when I paused for breath among the trees, I looked back once. The moon lay on the Billabong like a broken spearhead. In the center, where the water had burst upward, the surface already lay flat again, smooth as stone, with only a single reed slowly straightening from where it had been bent.